Big Fani requests an emergency hearing because some of those videos leaked out of her office, including Sidney Powell. She was explaining the scene and how Rudy Giuliani was treating her in the aftermath of the 2020 election. But the big one is Jenna Ellis, and she said that Dan Scavino, Trump's social media advisor, this guy with 1.7 million followers on X, 2024 presidential advisor, former assistant to POTUS, deputy chief of staff, and so on. Jenna Ellis says that Dan Scavino told her, Trump's not leaving. The boss is not leaving. And so people are very excited about this on the left. They're saying, oh, this is perfect evidence of Trump insurrecting America. Guys like Schiff are saying, we've never heard those words from an American president before, and we should do something about it, like, I guess, indict him again. But we're going to go through it because there are some, alternative takes here. It's like, what's Jenna Ellis doing? Is she trustworthy? Is she reliable? Is she somebody that has pattern of credibility in this type of case? Well, you can be the judge. Now, we're going to ultimately jump into an emergency order. So Fani is trying to stop these videos from leaking, and she's going to say that the videos came out from Harrison Floyd, another person who was a co-defendant in this case, the other guy who took a mugshot. Actually, he was held in custody for some time, and then they gave him the mugshot, and of course, he's been fighting this case hard. But Fani wants now a protective order to stop any more leaks coming out, because we know we got Kenneth Chesebro, who also took a guilty plea that's ultimately going to be dismissed, by the way. They all took diversion deals, so they will not have any convictions as long as they comply with the terms of their deal. But the long story short is, would other maybe co-defendants, would other people want to take plea deals if they know that their documents and these proffers, these videos are going to be leaked out for everybody to see? Maybe they won't want to take a deal because maybe they'll be criticized or condemned for some of these things, right? That's the theory. And so here is what it looked like. Now, this came out from Jenna Ellis, and this is her conversation. It came from ABC News, got the leak, but this was from her conversation with Georgia prosecutors, the Big Fani team.
And at the time period where they were going to start to discuss, what was Dan Scavino's role?
At the time, I believe his title was social media director for the White House. It became deputy chief of staff at the time that the conversation in question took place.
Okay, and when was that?
The conversation was around December 19th of 2020 at the White House Christmas party.
Okay, White House Christmas party is where the conversation was. What are you doing at a Christmas party? Everybody's on high energy, okay? There probably wasn't cocaine at the White House back then, but you never know. People are on high energy, right? It's a Christmas party. People are drinking, people are eating, people are dancing, people are having fun. So people are talking loudly. People are misinterpreting things, okay? And it's December 19th, so we're gonna put a pin in that date because she made some comments after that date, and we'll see if those comments that came after that date are in alignment with the comments that she makes here.
And I emphasized to him, I thought that the claims and the ability to challenge the election results was essentially over, because he said to me in a kind of excited tone,
So that was an interesting cut there from ABC.
well, we don't care and we're not going to leave. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the boss, meaning President Trump, and everyone understood the boss, that's what we all called him. He said, the boss is not going to leave under any circumstances. We are just going to stay in power. And I said to him, well, it doesn't quite work that way, you realize. And he said, we don't care.
Yeah, sounds like a regular Christmas conversation, around a holiday party. It's like, yeah, we're not leaving. Yeah, I mean, first of all, have you tried these crab cakes? They're incredible. Yeah, we'll take some more of those over here. Bring those back over here. Amazing. Yeah, anyways, we're staying here in the White House, okay? We love it, all right? We love these parties. Are you kidding me? We got Valentine's Day's coming up next year, and then we're gonna stick it out through the summer, and so we're not going anywhere. Jenna, and she's like, oh, you're insurrecting the whole world? It's a Christmas party. But here's Jenna, and you can even see this freeze frame on her face. She's like, she's very satisfied with herself. Yeah, okay. So again, did Trump tell you that, Jenna? Or was this Dan Scavino at a Christmas party? And did he say, like, we're going to violate the law to stay here? Or could it be that we're staying here because we're going to be successful in proving that this election was rigged? Many ways to interpret this, but this reads to me like somebody who's just trying to save their own skin. They're having this like fake conversation with each other. She's like, yeah, totally. I'd love Starbucks. I'd love a double extra latte. Put some extra creamer in there for me. You know what I'm saying? And, they have this conversation, and that's her. Now, the video, I don't know if she was expecting this to be leaked. She should have. I mean, obviously, this is a case involving national importance, and you've got a lot of self-interested people in there who want to point fingers at one another, but that's Jenna. Now, what's curious about all this is that Jenna, after that date, okay, Laura Loomer posted this one. She dug back through Jenna Ellis's X account, and she said the following on 12/28, which is 9 days after apparently that Christmas party where Dan Scavino was telling her, we're insurrecting the country. We're not leaving. Don't let them touch your crab cakes, all right, or whatever they're having, your pumpkin pie. So here on 12/28/2020, she says, President Trump should never concede the election, which I don't know, some people might say is insurrectionary language. If you concede the election, doesn't that mean you move? If you don't concede the election, then doesn't that mean you stay because you haven't lost, because you're the victor? Like, what are you saying, Jenna? So it seems like maybe your statement that you were sitting there like, you know, Miss Hall Monitor, no, Dan, I don't care if we're at a Christmas party. We're not staying. You understand, that's not how the Supreme Court sets it up. No, Jenna, did you file a brief there at the middle of your Christmas party? No, I doubt it. And so what happened instead is, I'm guessing she's filling in the blanks. You know, no. I always believed that the election, you know, we'd file a couple challenges and then we come to the point there would be a conclusory moment where we'd have to say enough, we've lost our efforts, and just kind of, you know, accept the defeat. But don't think that that really, you know, ever happened. And what's also interesting about this is our friend Julie Kelly, who you can follow over at Julie_Kelly2 on the X platform, or who you can follow at declassified.live. She's got an excellent Substack that I highly recommend. I subscribe to it, and she does some fun stuff. But Jenna, she said, oh yeah, you know, she went back through Jenna Ellis's depo transcript, and she said this: Jenna Ellis was so horrified at the Trump-Scavino plan to stay in power, as she just said, you can't do that, or you know that doesn't work, I'm a lawyer, that she apparently tricked them into believing that she was on their side by charging 6 figures, including invoices for December 2020 and January 2021. So, I mean, obviously you want to get paid for that, right? If you're on the payroll, you definitely want to get paid. Apparently she did. You know, I don't know ultimately what the monies look like, but here is what Julie Kelly clipped for us, saying that this came from her depo. So Jenna gets asked a question. Hey, Jenna, you're here for a depo. According to public FEC reports on disbursements by the Trump campaign, so stuff that's public record, and an associated political action committee, it says you received a total of $138,000 for the 2020 election cycle. Is that correct? 130 grand? Which, I mean, she worked her butt off on in 2020. I mean, she was flying all over the place, hanging out with Rudy Giuliani and all that stuff. I mean, there was all, you know, it's a lot. She was doing a lot of work. She's a lawyer, charged a lot. Okay. But is that correct? She says, pursuant to advice of counsel, I will invoke my constitutionally protected right to assert the Fifth Amendment. Good call. Another clip. Okay. So this looks to be a document that you produced in response to a subpoena question for Jenna that appears to be an invoice submitted by you, Jenna Ellis, to your client, Donald J. Trump for President, Inc. And this says it reflects services performed in December 2020, which is when she had that horrifying conversation with Dan, and January 2021. Oh man, she billed him for the month afterwards. An invoice for a total of $22,500. Nice couple months. Jenna, did you receive payment on this invoice from the Trump campaign? Did you get paid to participate in this insurrectionary behavior, Jenna? Pursuant to the advice of counsel, I will invoke my constitutionally protected right to assert the Fifth Amendment. All right, so we get what's going on here. All right, when you're not under criminal indictment, it's very easy to get paid. Then when you're under criminal indictment, you change your tune a little bit. No, I don't really know. I had no involvement in any of that. Now, we wanted to see what Dan Scavino said about this. Of course, did he have a response to this? As you can see, haven't seen anything from him. Last thing he posted was on the 12th, 2 days ago from the recording, and that was when it looks like he was at fight night hanging out with Dana White and some other pretty interesting and amazing people there. But no comment from him, so we'll see if he, you know, disputes that or what his position is on it. But we have another clip because this also leaked, and of course, we're going to get to the emergency order. Fani wants to stop the leaks out of her office. Very leaky there. And this is Sidney Powell. Now, she's explaining the scene. We'll check in with Shifty and see what he has to say about it. But this is Sidney explaining in a little bit of a longer clip what's happening. Now, again, I want to point out this also, by the way. So this is 2 minutes and 14 seconds, which is a little bit longer than the Jenna Ellis clip. As we saw, Jenna Ellis was a little bit shorter. And I don't know if this is, you know, the worst of it or if ABC has more. Is this the complete, you know, or they're going to be drip, drip, drips? Are they going to keep dropping this stuff off, you know, for the rest of the week? And Jenna's going to just, you know, have more and more clips that are going to be more damning for Trump. Maybe it's not damn. Maybe she says, and then Trump instructed me, you know, to do this. And then Trump instructed me to do that. And so on. Or is this it? Is this the 59-second banger? You know, wow, this is a drop. And if it is, like, that's pretty bad. Like, if this is all they spent all this time, charge her with like 7 felonies, and they get this little 59-second soundbite. So I'm hoping there's like a lot more to this, right? I mean, I'm not like hoping that, but like they better have a lot more than this. Then, you know, Fani's going to protect it all and lock it down. Or is this it? This is the big thing. All right, let's see, because we're going to go and hear from Sidney Powell, and I have the same commentary there. Like, is there a drip, drip, drip of this? Or is this the big climactic event? Is this the big reveal? You can be the judge of how damning it is.
There was a big shouting match in which Rudy called me every name in the book, and I was the worst lawyer he'd ever seen in his life. There were no circumstances under which he'd work with me on anything. He called me I don't know what all, and that's pretty much all I remember about that one. Did I know anything about election law? No, but I understand fraud from having been a prosecutor for 10 years.
What was President Trump's sense of what you would do as special counsel?
I guess he assumed, and I would have thought that I would have looked at putting into effect provision of 13848 that would have allowed the machines to be secured in 4 or 5 states.
How did you choose which states that you would target?
How would I have chosen that? By the ones where there were the most statistical anomalies.
Ms. Powell, were you ever around when anyone told Donald Trump that he had lost the election?
Okay, so up until now, like pretty meaningless. Okay, yes, Rudy and Sidney had a screaming match, and I don't condone that, by the way. I think it's, not really appropriate. It's not really productive at all to start screaming at people, but you get the point, right? Tensions are hot, everybody filing motions. It's kind of madness. And we watched this in real time. Like, it was extremely high pressure. We were even looking at Sidney Powell's filings, and we're like, what? Some of these are just really wonked out, right? Some of them were kind of bad, but we gave her some grace on the fact because she was deadlines all over the place. Like, deadline here, 7 days. Deadline here, 4 days. District court judge ordered this one. The end of the campaign was over, and they have really compressed timelines by which the filings have to be done because it's set by statute, like literally. So we gave her a little bit of grace there. But that conversation, the fact that she doesn't know much about election law, all of those things, that's not criminal. You can hire lawyers who aren't necessarily experienced, and sometimes that doesn't matter, right? Sometimes you can have a brilliant lawyer who just comes in, solves a problem because they can think clearly, and law operates mostly logically. So none of that is problematic. And again, is that the spiciness? Is that the big reveal? Who cares? So now we're asking about Trump's conduct and whether Trump is, coordinating this RICO type of attack on the country. And this is where we hear her.
Oh, yeah.
Who?
Pat Cipollone, Eric Hirschman, Derek Lyons all thought he'd lost.
Was that in the December 18th meeting?
Yes.
What was President Trump's reaction when, I guess, this cadre of advisors would say you lost?
Well, they would say that, and then they'd walk out, and he'd go, see, this is what I deal with all the time. He was specifically willing to appoint me special counsel. In fact, he looked over at Cipollone 3 different times and said, do I have the authority to name her special counsel?
And by the way, he's allowed to disagree with his advisors. Okay, there were other advisors who said, yeah, we think you got a pretty good shake here. This is rigged. CIA covered this up, and, election things here. And there were so many problems that, looking in hindsight, it's like, oh, obviously, they censored us. They manufactured stories. They suppressed the Hunter Biden story. They changed election rules. They, modified ballot requirements, the whole thing. I mean, it was just wild. So the president, that's normal, normally has that. Hey, should we invade this country? You got the Nikki Haley crowd comes in. Yes, definitely. Then you've got the other side, of other people, maybe on the Trump side, who say, how about not? How about we don't invade all of these countries and, start these global wars? That's normal. Just because you have like 9 people coming in and say you lost and 1 guy saying you didn't, well, turns out, in my opinion, that 1 guy was right? All those 9 other people, they just wanted Trump out of there. They were telling them what the establishment had concluded. And maybe had we gotten to the bottom of what actually happened at the election and actually counted, Ted Cruz called for just a pause to actually investigate this a little bit further. They couldn't allow that to happen. Are you kidding me? That's why January 6th was just perfect.
And Cipollone said, yes, you do. And then somebody said, well, she doesn't have a security clearance. So he looked at Cipollone and he said, do I have the authority to give her a security clearance? And Cipollone said, yes, you do. And then about the 3rd time we went through that scenario, Cipollone, I think, said, you can name her anything you want, Mr. President, and nobody's going to pay a bit of attention to it.
Right, that's the point. And there was no legitimacy anymore, right? Trump could have done anything, and everybody was just, you lost, bro, you lost, bro, you lost, bro. And so it was this coordinated effort, really, push him aside and push him out. But I didn't hear anything criminal in there, okay? It says that advisors told him that you lost. Okay, who cares? There's a lot of advisors who are morons all over the place. In fact, I think those guys were wrong. So again, not a huge reveal. Is there going to be more that comes out that's going to suddenly shatter the evidence from their proffer, right? We've been hearing this, and I'm not a fan that they had to plead guilty. Like, this is a show trial, but understand, their guilty pleas will be torn up. They'll be gone, right? And these proffers are really going to be the only thing that, memorialized now that they've been leaked. And so Fani is trying to stop these from leaking out, right? She's filing an emergency protective order to stop these leaks from coming out. Now, I don't know if she wants these leaks to come out because this is helpful to her case, but these aren't really helpful clips. I mean, like, it's just kind of like, okay, it's Scavino told Jenna something that Trump maybe said. All right, that's going to be the testimony at trial. All right. And then Sidney explains the scene. There was some backroom shenanigans, fights with Rudy Giuliani. Who cares? So here's Schiff, right? They just need a talking point, and They need to go on the various cable shows to spread their narrative, to spread the talking points. And so Schiff, as per usual, dutifully shows up to his favorite show called Inside Jen Psaki and explained what his take is on the Jenna tapes.
So, Congressman, I think it's safe to say that Jenna Ellis wasn't exactly coming in her deposition with the January 6th committee. If I were you, that would be very maddening. But now she says she was told that Trump would not leave the White House under any circumstances. How do you think prosecutors will use that testimony?
Well, I think they will use it very powerfully. And I have to say, it just shocks you to listen to that testimony. Even though we knew Donald Trump engaged in this multi-pronged effort to overturn the election.
Okay, that was a non-answer. How are they going to use that testimony? Probably not, really, because unless they get Dan Scavino to come in and testify, and he says that Trump told him that, and they're not even charging Trump with insurrection or anything like that. So what is it going to go prove? We'll see. Kind of just jumps right over the question, as you can tell.
Involving pressure campaigns against state legislators, involving a fake elector plot, and ultimately the violence on January 6th. But to hear in such cold-blooded terms that the boss, Donald Trump, isn't going to leave. It doesn't matter that there's no legal basis to stay. He isn't going to leave. We have never heard those words from a president of the United States in our history.
We still haven't heard it. Nobody heard it from Trump. It's like third hand in a politicized criminal prosecution brought by Fani Willis that's going after her political opponents. Like, you think this is a reliable statement? We haven't heard it from Trump. Adam, by the way, he got censured, in case you forgot. I always, forget about a reminder here. What an embarrassment. This guy got censured by Congress. Total loser.
Many others have re-election and lost. They have never tried to cling to power. They have never said the election doesn't matter. I'm not leaving until Donald Trump. I think that's going to be very powerful testimony. It shows why this investigation in Georgia and these plea agreements are going to produce some really powerful evidence.
I don't know. I don't think so. We'll see. Now, she's going to come in and say Dan Scavino said that, and I don't know what Dan Scavino is going to say or what Trump's going to say, right? It turns out they left. They packed up. They left. They all left. There are a lot of bits of evidence to show that they didn't actually do that. So it's like locker room talk. It's just a bunch of bravado, and that's going to be your claim? They left. All right. So Schiff is very, animated about that because he just likes anything he can latch onto on his favorite show. But this is what Fani says. She wants to stop this leakiness coming out of her office. It's unacceptable for her office to be so leaky. But this is what they filed. It's an emergency order filed out of the Superior Court, Fulton County, state of Georgia, versus Donald Trump. We got here Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Meadows, Chesebro, Clark, Ellis, Smith, Cheeley, Roman, Schaefer, Tresher, Lee, Prescott, Floyd, Cootie, Catherine, Sidney Powell, Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton. Now, one name I did not see on that list, if you'll notice, is Scavino. Did you see that? Didn't see Scavino on there. So if this is a giant RICO case and Jenna Ellis is involved in it, where is Scavino? Has he not been charged? Don't see it there. Anyways, here's Fani. Now, she says the state of Georgia comes through Big Fani, and on an emergency basis, we renew our prior request that this court enter a protective order. We've already asked you, Judge, to protect this stuff over all discovery materials produced by the state, by Fani's office, to any defendant in this matter, in order to protect witnesses and to safeguard sensitive and confidential information. Now, such information includes, but is not limited to, statements of witnesses, personal identifying information of witnesses, confidential communications, confidential business records, documents obtained under seal, records from outside government agencies, and grand jury materials. We want all of this protected, right? A force field around all this discovery so nobody can see it. In support of this motion, here's what Fani's office says. On September 27th, earlier this year, the government, Fani, filed an underlying motion for protective order. We'll take a look at it. And she filed it back in September. She said, Your Honor, we need a protective order over the discovery materials. Now, she says, this court, Judge, your fault. You have neither ordered a hearing on our motion nor entered the requested order, but we've nevertheless complied with all the discovery deadlines. She says, in its motion that we submitted in January, the state emphasized the need for a protective order, stating to the court that the public release of information contained within the discovery could subject witnesses to harassments and threats prior to trial, which could discourage cooperation and candor. Premature public discussions or release of information, they say, quote, could also affect the jury pool. So they're getting a little nervous here, right? Maybe people are seeing, hey, like these other plea deals they're trying to execute, people are saying, what if my plea deal proffer gets leaked? And they find that I also kind of made something up maybe for the government and it doesn't sync with what my public actions were, like getting paid, tens of thousands of dollars, or like posting tweets like Trump should never concede. There's incongruities here. So maybe that will cause the government to not get them to flip, In other words, Jenna will say what Jenna will say to the government because she's like, well, they no, it's all going to be sealed. They'll tell you whatever you want. We'll deal with it at trial, whatever, if there is a trial. But, she'll just kind of leave it there. But the video won't leak or none of that. But now it leaks, and so the plea deals kind of get derailed. They say, and this is kind of Fani's argument, it's like, we can't pressure people if you can all see everything that's happening. So on November 13th, they say, this is the date that the videos got leaked, confidential video recordings of proffers, which is what we watched, conducted by the state with certain witnesses pursuant to guilty plea agreements, again, not convictions, were published by ABC News and other media outlets. We just watched them. Now, these confidential video recordings were not released by the state to any party other than the defendants charged in the indictment pursuant to the discovery process as required by law. Now, of course, they'll say that, oh, well, these are government prosecutors. We can trust them. They don't leak any documents. And we know that's nonsense, right? They leak all the time. These are materials that somehow always end up in the Washington Post or the New York Times, or these materials. Like, we've seen all sorts of crazy stuff out of Georgia in particular, right? With the grand jury and the grand jury foreperson woman, and, all sorts of stuff has been leaking out of Georgia for years. So I don't buy that for a minute, right? I'm not saying that Fani did it, but I'm not saying that you can automatically rule her out. She says, or somebody from her team, somebody from her office. Now, they're going to blame another defendant. And you can see on November 14th, they say, which is the date of this recording, counsel for Harrison William Prescott Floyd sent an email to the state. So the lawyer for Harrison Floyd sent an email to the state, to members of the defense, and to the court that stated the following, quote, it was Harrison Floyd's team. And they say, see Exhibit B. This is an email from T.A. Harding. You go, what on earth? The guy just admits that it's his client? Okay, and so that's the original protective order from Fani. Let's see what Exhibit B looks like. This is the email. This came in 7:14 at 9:30 in the morning, 7:29. Regarding proffers leaked to the media. Somebody's going, man. Kamikaze Hitman sends an email. Kamikaze Hitman on 9/13. He says, regarding proffers leaked to the media. This goes to Nathan Wade, who is Fani's, kind of hand-chosen mentor, who's been paid a lot of money to prosecute these cases. And Steve Sado also got this email. Everything else is redacted. Now, we don't know what is happening in these redactions. Probably CCing everybody else, court clerks, everybody in the whole staff. So it's from Kamikaze Hitman to Nathan Wade and everybody. And it says here, T.A. Harding, J.D., attorneys at law. It was Harrison Floyd's team, period. Sincerely, T.A. Harding. Harrison Floyd did it? What? Now, but something happened. Now here, Nathan J. Wade, Fani's former mentor, said the state had nothing to do with leaking any information to the media. Nothing to do at all. November 13th, from Steve Sado to others, he says, it appears that ABC, CNN, WAPO have obtained leaked copies of the video proffers. Oh, they got Chesebro too. Now, Steve Sado said, these proffers did not come from Jennifer or me, or anyone connected to my defense team. This is not from the defense. Please state for the record whether the prosecution or anyone connected to the prosecution team had any hand in the disclosure of the proffers to the media. That's Steve Sado. Okay, he's not happy about this. And so then Nathan Wade responded right away and said the state had nothing to do with leaking any information to the media. And T.A. Harding said it was Harrison Floyd's team. But that's Harrison Floyd's lawyer? That's a little bit strange. So we'll come back to that. Now, this is the certificate of service, so we don't need that. But let's go back to the filing. So this is the motion for an emergency hearing. It was Harrison Floyd's team. The email was sent in response to an email from another defense attorney inquiring into whether the state, that's the Steve Sado email, was the person that released the confidential video recordings. The state previously indicated that it did not publicly release the confidential information and the recordings, and then counsel for Harrison William Scott Floyd then sent a subsequent email that we did not see in the exhibits, stating that his prior email was a typo. Oh, what? That's a weird typo, man. Sometimes when I type a complicated word like conscience, I get everything all discombobulated. It's like CONSCIENCE. It gets complicated. C and the I and the O and the U and all the things. But, that's kind of a hard typo to hit, I don't usually make that mistake when I'm typing, blah, 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 blah. It was Harrison Floyd's team, you know. Oops, spell check. It's kind of a big typo there. So I don't know what the rest of the context was around that. Like, did he just say, oops, typo? Or did he say something more to that? We don't know, but kind of a big typo there. So then the lawyer sent another email. Oops, that was a typo. He said, by the way, our client, defendant Floyd's team, did not communicate with the media. We did not. So it was not Harrison Floyd's team. So all defendants, says Fani, have been previously released on bond with conditions of release that prohibits them from intimidating any person known to be a co-defendant, communicating any facts of this case, or otherwise obstructing the administration of justice. Fani's office says the release of these confidential video recordings is clearly intended to intimidate witnesses in this case, who maybe they're trying to turn, who then say, I don't want my videos going out, subjecting them to harassment and threats prior to trial. Or this constitutes indirect communication about the facts of the case with co-defendants, witnesses, obstructs the administration of justice, and violates the conditions of release. So Fani says, now going forward, Your Honor, since you have not granted me our protective order, the state will not produce copies of confidential video recordings of proffers to any defendant to prevent further public disclosure. We're not giving those out anymore. Instead, the defendants must come to the office to view the confidential recordings of the proffers. They may take notes, but they're going to be prohibited from creating any recordings or reproductions. So in light of the release of these confidential video recordings, the state requests that the court, 1, enter a temporary order prohibiting disclosure of any discovery materials by any party, 2, schedule an emergency hearing on the state's motion filed, and at the conclusion of the hearing, enter a permanent order prohibiting the disclosure of discovery materials by any party. Respectfully submitted the 14th day of November, 2023, signed by F. McDonald Wakeford, Chief Senior Assistant DA out of Big Fani's office. Now, this was the original filing for the protective order of other discovery materials, and they're going to be making an argument for that. The judge has granted hearing on this, and that's going to be taking place on November 15th, coming up soon. Now, as to the typo, some great suggestions in the chat. I saw one, maybe they just forgot the word not. Oh, maybe that's all it was. You know, maybe it's Harrison Floyd's team saying it was not Harrison Floyd's team. Okay, could have been that simple, right? I just forgot it. Or it wasn't, right? It wasn't Harrison Floyd's team. Maybe he just dictated it. It wasn't Harrison Floyd's team, and Siri got it wrong, you know, or something. So this could be that, you know, who knows what happened with it, but we're going to have an ultimate decision on this tomorrow because it will be streamed live on the Georgia Court YouTube channel from Scott McAfee. The judge posted this. He says, having read and considered the state's emergency motion for a protective order, this is scheduled for a hearing Wednesday, November 15th. Will also be live streamed and posted on the YouTubes. And so, of course, my friends, we will be here to continue to cover this when we have some results on it. We're covering all of the Trump trials, in particular, the Rico, Georgia, Big Fani case. And so we'll see what the judge says about this, what McAfee says, if he is questioning the defense or if he issues the protective order. We'll be there to cover it, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining us as we do. Would love it if you checked out our website, robertgovea.com, signed up for our daily newsletter. That way you can get all of these segments and more, including access to this mind map and all the documents on the screen, delivered to your inbox every single day. Be looking forward to seeing you on the next one.